Hello, everyone. My name is Stanley St. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about Thomas Paine's Common Sense. Now, before I go into the summary analysis of this work, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and/or comment so that the channel can continue to grow. Now, Common Sense by Thomas Paine is a very interesting work. It really gives us a detailed account of the relationship between Europe, England, and the colonies. Now, 6 months after Common Sense was published, the Americans, the American colonies, they pretty much said, all right, that's it. Declaration of Independence. We're going to be our own country now. We're not going to be follow King George anymore. At the time it was King George III that was ruling over England, and the colonies had enough. They had enough of the soldiers, and really, when you think about it, the Third Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is no quartering. If we can simple it down to something, it would be no quartering. Because there was a period of time when British soldiers would come to the colonies and they would go into people's houses and just live there, eat their food, and there's nothing that the owner of the house could say about it. So imagine you're sitting at home and the soldiers come in and they're going to live at your house. And this was a very serious problem because it's the Third Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, no quartering. So it came to a point that the colonies just had enough. They couldn't take it anymore. And Thomas Paine's Common Sense, it really gives a very good argument as to why the colonies should go off on their own, become their own democratic republic, and just become their own country. Thomas Paine, within Common Sense, he talks about the problem with the monarchy, or with monarchies in general. How there's the problem with children. I mean, you might have a good king here and there, but the child of that good king might be horrible. He talks about the problem with young kings and old kings. A young king might lack experience, and an old king might be too old to be king. And then there's young people, or middle-aged people, or people that are around the young king or the old king, that are just there to take advantage and to make themselves rich off of the people's backs. So Thomas Paine really, in a common sense way, he really outlines the problem of the monarchy, the detriments as to being a person that's not wealthy, that's not in the House of the Lords in a monarchy, and how horrible it's for peasants. The colonies really was a refuge. It was a refuge to all of the people, to the misfits, the ne'er do wells, the people that just didn't have a home in Europe, and they didn't see any way of making something of themselves. And still to this day, in 2023, we can say that America is still that land of free opportunity, that land of upward mobility, that land of where if you don't have financial opportunities, if you need freedom, if you need to escape some type of tyranny, people come to the United States. Listen, people all over the world, from Africa, from Europe, from China, from Korea, any country you could think of in the Caribbean, people are still coming to the U.S. every single day. Thousands of people, immigration, people just pouring into the United States in every direction. Still in 2023, that is still the reality of this day. In many ways, America is still a refuge for many nations, many people, all the misfits, all of the ne'er-do-wells, all of the people that have no home. They come to the United States and they try to make their home here. So that's something that definitely needs to be thought of. That's something that needs to be, considered within this work, and that's what Thomas Paine does within this work here. He tells us about the reality of Europe, how people were treated, and all the faults of the monarchy in England. And so the story goes on, and what else? The thing that common sense tells us, and that Thomas Paine tells us, is that he really breaks it down for the colonies and what they need to do to create a just and better country. First of all, he does talk about how there shouldn't be any more monarchs. The rule of law should be king. And that would create a better society for all people. He talks about equality, how all men should be created equal. So this idea of equality, of inalienable rights, it's a idea that several different types of men throughout history have had. This idea of men existing together, having the opportunity to pursue your own happiness, and not being underneath a ruler, a master, a king of some sort. So because from the early perspective of masters and kings, it always goes awry at some place. You might have a good king again. You might have a good king here or there, but ultimately you might find a tyrant. And so Thomas Paine talks about the rule of law. He talks about equality. He talks about, and pretty much, I will say here that he encourages the colonists. He encourages the colonies. He tells them, listen, you have the materials to make ships in the country. You have raw materials and raw goods. You have wood. You have all the things you need to build a navy. You have young and willing men that are prepared to fight. You have all these things that you need to defend yourself against the English empire. Now, at this time, the English empire, it was it had the largest, the strongest, the most powerful army in the world, and it was spread out all over the planet. That's how powerful the English army was. The sun never set on the British Empire. So it was very, very large and massive and very powerful. Lots of money was coming into the British Empire, especially from the colonies. And so it was scary to think about separating from the British Empire and to rebel and to leave the British Empire. But the thing is, the people had had enough. Their money was being taken. They weren't being treated fairly. The army, the soldiers that were here, the British soldiers, they would not treat the colonizers as English citizens or normal. We're all part of the same thing. No, the colonies, they were treated as they made money for the empire. That's what they were treated like. And so they weren't being considered properly. Taxation without representation. So they weren't being represented in any which way. In England. And so that caused several different types of problems. So in common sense, Thomas Paine here, he really takes it in and really tells us a lot about how it would be possible for the people of the colonies to defend themselves, to rebel, and to overcome to England. And he pretty much lists out some very practical reasons. Number one, again, it's an age where there's no internet. There's no way of getting messages and getting orders quickly, right? So it's handwritten letters. Somebody had to get in a ship, and that is going to take several months for the ship to get to the colonies, and then somebody would read out what the king had to say 3 months ago about a problem that was going on currently. Now today, I mean, in modern times, if something happens in Florida, the president can know about it within minutes. If something happens in some other foreign country, thousands of miles away, the president can know about it instantly. And so he can say something about it, and literally, if he has to, he can get on a plane, and it could be a couple hours or a day. He could be there and deal with the situation. And so communication was very hard at that time when you had Europe versus the colonies, England versus the colonies. And so Thomas Paine basically tells us that it's just inefficient. It's not efficient that the king could be so far away and properly manage the colonies. And he even says this is something from God, because he pretty much says this is something from God because due to the fact that the colonies were so far away and the sea was so vast and pushed each end so far away to each other, it really give the colonies an advantage, and that's a massive advantage that America still has to this day. It's so far away and so isolated from the rest of Europe, that it gave it an advantage to build itself up, to build an army, and to prepare for the British. And again, Thomas Paine raises the idea that, the British, if they do come to fight you guys, they're going to come to your turf. It's going to be a long travel from sea. Then they have to hit your shores. They don't know the landscape. They don't know, you get home advantage, right? You get home court advantage. You can set up traps. You can pick the place of battle. You can pick how you fight. These people, the British Empire, yes, they're strong, they're powerful, but they are leaving. The ships are leaving from different points of the world, coming to the colonies, and going to war. And so it's a lot to do. And so Thomas Paine really outlines this massive advantage that the colonies have over the British. And so he does, he talks about the monarchy, its faults, its problems, why it's failing the colonies. He says why the colonies need to fight for independence, why they need to create a democratic republic. He talks about how they can defend themselves, their advantages in the battlefield, how they can overcome the British, and he talks about how America can be a refuge, and a country that could be a better for tomorrow for people who have no names, the misfits, the ne'er-do-wells, that want a better life, and want to improve the lives of their family. So it's a lot to take in. It's a complete, I mean, in terms of deeper meaning analysis here, it's a really thorough breakdown of the reality, the relationship between the rich and the poor, between the ruling families of England and the poor, and the relationship between the colonists, and well, their monarchy, and how they overcame the monarchy, and really how it kind of gave them the motivation to do something about it. Thomas Paine here. 6 months after this came out, the colonizers were like, the colonies were like, this makes sense. I mean, they already had, all credit doesn't go to Thomas Paine. They already had movements to rebel. But with this detailed report and reasonable explanation, to break away from Britain, it really gave the colonizers a way out, a logical, reasonable look at how they could actually pull this off, and become their own independent country. So that is what Common Sense is about. That's my summary about it. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.